All right, time for commodities market update. Let's look at what's happening in oil market. We see Brent crude futures rallied to $116 per barrel, the highest since August 2013. Contract was at $116.60 a barrel, up about $3.67. U.S. West Texas intermediate crude stood at $113.01 a barrel, up $2.41 after touching a fresh year high of $113.31 a barrel. Well, we have Damilola Akimbami, head research financial derivatives company, joining us. Dami, it's a new high, $116.
Yes.
Oil is on fire right now.
It is. I mean, the rally is on, it's unbelievable.
It's unstoppable.
Yeah.
Like, I'm wondering what can actually stop this rally right now?
Oh, well, a peaceful resolution of the war may have a dampening effect. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of OPEC's meeting yesterday. I mean, according to them, they feel that the oil market is balanced at the moment. And what is causing the price volatility is geopolitical tensions and not the current market fundamentals. So, meaning that as long as the war remains, as long as that war is ongoing and Russia continues with its invasion of Ukraine, we could see oil prices touch about 120, 125. You know, I mentioned that on Tuesday. So right now, that is what is driving it, because we're seeing the energy crunch. The sanctions are biting even and affecting the global energy trade. So oil price, gas, wheat, even gold, precious metals too, are benefiting from what is going on between Russia and Ukraine.
Quite interesting. But at the end of the day, we see the International Energy Agency announce plans to release about 60 million barrels
yes.
of oil reserves, to try and alleviate this upward movement.
And it didn't have any impact.
No impact.
Yes, there are about 33 members of this agency, and the US is one of the countries, Japan too, and basically just to try and alleviate this supply tightness. But it barely scratched the surface. And bear in mind, one of the structural or fundamental issues affecting the oil market prior to the war was supply tightness. And that's why even last year, July, we saw OPEC and its allies agree to increase production by 400,000 barrels. And they've been doing that steadily and consistently since July last year. And even the meeting they had yesterday, they agreed to continue even in April. And if this might continue, a lot of countries, especially the US, they've been trying to get OPEC to be more aggressive with its output increase. But OPEC, as far as it's concerned, feels that everything is fine, no need to be more aggressive. And even despite the fact that they're increasing output, they're increasing member countries' quota, there are some countries such as Nigeria, Angola, that are producing below the quota. So for instance, in March, OPEC increased Nigeria's quota to 1.76 million barrels per day from 1.72 in February. But we're still producing about 1.4 million barrels. So that's at least about 300,000 barrels shortfall. And we know what is happening, the operational challenges, pipeline vandalism and whatever. So despite the fact that there's that modest increase by OPEC and its allies, but member countries are still struggling to meet up. And that's what we're seeing drive this supply tightness in addition to the war. And
so other members are struggling to meet up
yes. Not just Nigeria. Not just Nigeria. Angola too is struggling. And bear in mind that also because of the relaxation of COVID restrictions globally, so demand too is picking up. So on one hand, you have demand increasing. On the other hand, countries are not producing as much to bridge the gap. So this, with everything that is going on, oil prices are... The rally is going to continue for the foreseeable future.
It's really hot right now. And so far, Russia's energy complex has not, been targeted, by sanctions. You see that changing anytime soon?
Well, the sanctions haven't, or the energy facility hasn't been targeted by the sanctions yet. But we know that a lot of countries are already contemplating stopping the importation of Russian crude. So, for instance, even Europe, a lot of European countries are considering that because Russia is a major supplier of oil and gas to Europe, and they're considering that, and they're going to damn the consequences, really, as basically part of these sanctions. And in a way, also, it's even also affecting Russia, because one of the concerns is that there might be crude supply disruptions from Russia, because once those sanctions hit, and Russia, which is a major exporter of crude, I think after Saudi Arabia is like the second largest exporter of crude, once those sanctions start to affect Russia's crude supply to the outside world, all bets are off. And so I don't know whether President Putin is going to consider that, because, any average president with everything that's been going on would want to think twice about what is going with the impact of all these sanctions on the markets. But it would be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I wonder what Putin has, up his sleeves at this point. But, gas is still, another issue,
Yes.
though. And it seems, I don't know, at some point Europe might be planning to wean off,
Yes.
Russia's gas at this point. But it's going to be a huge
It's
impact.
going to be tough, but it creates opportunities for other countries to fill up that gap. I mean, because once Russia is inaccessible or countries stop importing from Russia, other countries can fill up that gap. For instance, Nigeria, why can't we? I know that, yes, we don't produce enough. I mean, we're not even exporting enough. But, I mean, we could fill that gap. Because bear in mind, at a point in time, a couple of years back, maybe 5, 6 years ago, the U.S. was one of our major importers. They were one of our major buyers of our own crude oil. But it stopped, obviously, because of the increase and growth of shale oil in that country. So, I mean, India right now is our largest buyer of our crude oil. Why can't we extend to Europe? So it creates opportunities for other countries to fill up that gap. And it will favor, obviously, our export earnings and our gross external reserves accretion.
Right.
Yes.
And this is a time where everything is going up.
Yeah.
Prices are rising.
Yeah.
Oh, everything. Talking about fertilizer this time, and that's another headache for farmers.
Yes, yes, because Russia is the largest exporter of fertilizer. So obviously, once Russia
exports everything.
Yes, it has a diversified export base, which, I mean, is something that we wish could happen, or we are hoping for the Nigerian economy. Russia is big in wheat, corn, fertilizer, oil and gas. So, for instance, and because of what is happening with the world, fertilizer prices globally are on the increase, and it's going to affect farmers, especially because the planting season is commencing, both in Nigeria and even globally. I mean, the onset of the planting season is going to start. And obviously, during the planting season, you're going to need various inputs. One of it is fertilizer. And if you can't access fertilizer, or the major exporter is being affected by the sanctions and cannot export, you have supply shortages, which would filter into higher prices. And for Nigeria, what does that mean? We do produce fertilizer. However, there's a gap. I mean, what we produce is about 5 million metric tons annually, but what the country requires is about 7 million tons. So we actually import to fill that gap. And we have, at least, there are major fertilizer plants. There's the Indorama fertilizer plant, there's Dangote fertilizer plants, we have Notori. But because of the challenges in that industry, so for instance, Nigeria has a low fertilizer consumption rate compared to available arable land, if you compare it to our peers in sub-Saharan Africa. So, for instance, our fertilizer consumption is about 20 kilograms per hectare of arable land. Ghana is about, let's say, 29 kilograms. The average in sub-Saharan Africa is about 33. So that, first of all, there's that low consumption. Another thing is the fact that arbitrage opportunities. So, fine, to an extent, fertilizer price in Nigeria is subsidized. So people take advantage of the exchange rate, they sell across the border and then bring back the dollar. So that creates arbitrage opportunities. And also, more importantly, is the fact that the use of fertilizer in Nigeria is inefficient. Because, I mean, there's been a lot of investment into the fertilizer industry. We've seen increased private sector participation, but we're yet to bridge that gap. And that's because of the inefficient use of fertilizer. What am I trying to say? For instance, the type and blend of fertilizer you would use in a certain area might not be the good blend or the right blend in another area. So if you use the wrong blend, it will affect your crop, it will affect yield, it will affect agricultural output. So these are some of the challenges facing the fertilizer industry in Nigeria.
Yeah, and you did mention that, we import to, bridge the...
Yes, yes, to bridge that gap.
That gap,
yes.
for fertilizer. And I'm wondering, is there any commodity that we don't, import to actually... bridge some kind of gap?
Well, for instance, cocoa. Cocoa is one of our strong exports. We're the largest exporter of tubers. So that's another thing. But again, yam tubers, to an extent, they're almost perishable. I mean, there's a limit to how long your yam tuber would last on the shelf. So again, preservation, storage facilities. If I'm going to export yam to the UK or to the US, the time frame, by the time it gets to the destination, I mean, if it's not properly preserved, you see it dries up and all that. So these are some of the things.
And yam has really changed.
Yes.
I remember before, back in the days, you could have yam for like a month.
Yes.
But now a week.
Especially if you, like for instance now, the New Yam Festival period is over. That was around sometime last year. So what you're going to be seeing in the market, if at all, is old yam. And old yam, I mean, if you even look at it, the skin, the peels they're already drying up. So there's a limit to how long you can keep it. But I mean, we also have sesame seeds, cashew nuts, and what have you that we grow in this country. So I mean, at least this is an opportunity for the government to take advantage of the rising price, because there's so much opportunity untapped in the fertilizer industry. Again, because the type of land that we have is nutrient deficient, especially in the north. So that creates opportunity for growth in that industry.
Right. All right, let's, well, the scarcity is still on.
For scarcity,
and,
yes.
obviously, fares, transport fares are up at this point. I'm sure it's a domino effect. It's going to impact everything.
Yes, filters down into food items, because the fuel used to transport these food commodities from the farmland to the markets are being affected. Petrol is now being sold above like 200 naira per litre or even higher than that. Diesel is now being traded or sold at about 445 naira, 450 naira per litre. So definitely, like you rightly said, the domino effect. We start to see practically almost everything increase in price. On one hand, we could also start to see shortages, because if they can't transport those goods, logistics and distribution chain, the supply chain disruptions, I mean, it's going to have a significant effect on consumer prices, on commodity prices, and on the average Nigerian wallet.
All right. But what's your outlook for the agricultural, commodities at this point?
Well, I'll start with the domestic commodities.
Yeah.
Right now, at least when we carried out our survey at FDC, when we carried out our survey sometime last week, so that was towards the end of February, we saw a decline in most of our commodity prices, and it's just basically because of consumer price resistance, because disposable income is still significantly low, despite the fact that planting season is going to commence sometime in Q2. But that price resistance is affecting prices. But we know that, obviously, but if you look at inflation numbers for March, and if this scarcity continues beyond March, we are definitely going to see an increase in commodity prices, which will filter into inflation. Now, for global commodities, or if you look at our slides, all the commodities, wheat, corn, sugar, cocoa, all the commodity prices are up. Wheat and corn, obviously, because of the war. What is affecting cocoa, despite the marginal increase of about 0.32%, what is affecting cocoa? There are concerns about weak demand at the airports. So because of what is going on, there are fears that air travel may be disrupted because of the sanctions and because of what is happening in Western Europe. And the airport is a major source of chocolate sales. So if that happens and we see a decline in demand, that could affect cocoa prices. And obviously sugar also. Sugar is rallying because of the oil price rally.
Quite interesting. I guess
Yes.
we could call it the business of war.
Yes.
All right, Damilola
Kimbami,
Head of Research, Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ladi, for having me.
coming on the program. All right, we'll take a moment now. Business Morning returns in a moment.